Hello students, welcome to this session of Environment and Ecology. I am Rajvardhan Bordekar, your faculty for Environment and Ecology. So today we'll be starting with previous year questions related to environment and ecology. And today we will focus upon the questions asked from ecology section of environment and ecology. Previous year questions are very important for any student because previous year questions along with syllabus acts as a lighthouse because they guide us towards our goal and they help us to make sure that our studies remain on path. And that's why for any student, syllabus as well as previous year questions are quite important. So one should always discuss and one should always focus upon syllabus and the previous year questions by the UPSC itself. So in this session, we will start with our discussion of previous year questions related to ecology. Then we will shift towards previous year questions of biodiversity, then climate change, then pollution, then international organizations, etc. Fine. So with this, I hope you will get clarity about the types and the way in which UPSC is asking questions from environment and ecology. These previous year question videos as well as syllabus will help you to remain on the path towards success. So let us begin with this very important session of previous year questions. Firstly, the question that we are going to discuss is from ecology section. And the first question is from year 2010. First question is, let us discuss from the point of view of evolution of living organisms. So this question is about the evolution of living organisms. Which one of the following is the correct sequence of evolution? Options are A, otter, then tortoise, then shark. B, shark, tortoise and otter. C, tortoise, shark and then otter. And D, shark, otter and then tortoise. So the question is about evolution. Evolution of life on the Earth's surface. And we know that evolution of life on the Earth's surface started with single cell organisms. After single cell organisms, multicell organisms evolved. And under multicellular organisms, there are different types of organisms that have formed a sequence of evolution. So evolution of life on the earth has followed a particular sequence. Firstly, single cellular organisms evolved. After single cellular organisms, multicellular organisms evolved. After multicellular organisms, it was fishes in the aquatic ecosystem that evolved. After fishes, it was amphibians, then reptiles, then birds, and finally mammals evolved on the face of the earth. Right? So this is the order of evolution and this is very important from your exams point of view. You should try to remember this order of evolution. Firstly, single cellular organisms, followed by multicellular organisms, followed by fishes in aquatic ecosystem, then amphibians, then reptiles, then birds, and finally mammals evolved on this earth as a part of evolution process. And this question talks about three organisms. First is otter, second is tortoise, and third is shark. Right? So out of these organisms, otters are considered as mammals. Right? So otters are the mammals and they evolved at the last as compared to shark and tortoise, right? So otters have evolved at the last. Then shark is a fish, obviously. And that's why, as this particular sequence tell us, it is sharks or fishes that have evolved before amphibians, reptiles, birds, and mammals. So it should be shark as the first choice of evolution, right? So suppose in this question, it tells us about shark as the, so you know that, so let us consider that you know that sharks are evolved at the first instance in evolution process. So you should eliminate directly these options because you know that it is shark that has evolved as a first organism amongst these three, right? Thereafter, you know that it is otters that have evolved at the last because otters are considered as mammals. Otters are considered as mammals. Fine. So otters are last in this particular option amongst B and C. And that's why it should be your answer. Fine. So how we have reached up to this particular answer? Here what we know that fishes have evolved before amphibians, reptiles, birds, etc. Fine. And shark amongst these three is a type of fish. And that's why it should be at the first place amongst these organisms if we consider evolution. And that's why we eliminated otter and tortoise as the first place of answer if we consider evolution, right? So we eliminated A and C and we were left with B and D. Now you have the idea that it is mammals that have evolved at the last in the evolution sequence, and you have idea that tortoise are not mammals, right? Tortoise are not mammals, and hence it should not be at the last position. It should not be at the last position in the evolution of these three organisms because tortoise are not the mammals. And hence you should eliminate this option as well. And that's why your answer is B. Firstly, sharks evolved. After sharks, it was tortoise and finally otter, right? So the answer for this question is B. Answer is B. Fine. So I hope you have understood this question and at your places you can read this particular discussion. Next now. Next question is a pesticide which is a chlorinated hydrocarbon is sprayed on a food crop. The food chain is. So what question is telling us? A particular pesticide has been spreaded on a food crop and that food crop is a part of a food chain, and that food chain is firstly food crop, obviously, as it is the producer, then rat, followed by snake, and then hawk. So that is the food chain, and we have spreaded chlorinated hydrocarbon on this particular food crop. Next part of the question. In this food chain, the highest concentration of the pesticide would accumulate in which one of the following? Fine. So what question is asking? In this particular food chain, this chlorinated hydrocarbon, which is a contaminant, its concentration will be high amongst which trophic level or amongst which organism the concentration of chlorinated hydrocarbon will be high. Options are A, food crop, B, rat, C, snake, and D, hawk. So let us discuss this question. This question is about two very important concepts related to the ecology, and that is bioaccumulation and magnification, right? So whenever we talk about food chain, it is not that only energy is transmitted amongst different trophic levels of a food chain, but apart from energy, certain contaminants are also passed through this particular trophic level. And that transmission of contaminants is considered under bioaccumulation and biomagnification, right? So this question is about bioaccumulation and biomagnification. When we talk about bioaccumulation, what do we mean by bioaccumulation? So in order to explain bioaccumulation, let us take help of this particular diagram. So in this diagram, you can see that first part is about the bioaccumulation. So let us discuss that part. And the dark blue is a level of contaminant. Fine. So there is a fish, and that fish right now or at this stage, at first stage, do not contain any contaminant. But at the second stage, contaminants have entered into the body of these fishes, right? Now, as these fishes grow with time, the level of contaminant also increases in the body of fishes. You can see in these stages. At first stage, there was nothing inside the body of fish. At second stage, some contaminant has entered, and with time, that contaminant is getting increased. Right? With time, the concentration of that contaminant is getting increased day by day. And that is nothing but bioaccumulation. So let me define what is bioaccumulation. Bioaccumulation is the increase in the concentration of contaminants inside the body of an organism with time. And as the concentration of that contaminant increases inside the body of an organism with time, it starts affecting that organism negatively, right? So that is bioaccumulation, wherein the contaminant is getting accumulated inside the body and the concentration is increasing day by day. Second is biomagnification. So similar to bioaccumulation, biomagnification is also about the increase in the concentration of contaminants. But in biomagnification, we are not focusing upon one specific organism. Rather, we talk about a food chain with respect to which the concentration of contaminants are increasing. For example, in this food chain. So initially, there are these, let's say these are crustaceans, one of the basic organisms in the or primary consumers in the food chain of aquatic ecosystem. These crustaceans are being consumed by fishes. Now, initially the concentration of contaminants inside the body of crustaceans is quite low. But as these crustaceans are being consumed by these fishes, the concentration has increased. Now, these fishes are being consumed by this, let's say this is sea lion, right? So in this body of sea lion, the concentration of contaminant has increased. Now, as these sea lions are, or let's say these are seals, whatever it may be, as these seals are being consumed by this polar bear, here again in the body of polar bear, the concentration of contaminant is high, right? So amongst all these organisms in this food chain, the concentration of contaminant is high in the body of topmost consumer. And that's why the question that we are discussing is related to bioaccumulation. magnification, right? So let us discuss this question. Let us take that food chain that is being given in the question itself. So the question is, in the question we have given this food chain. First is food crop. So we have spread this chlorinated hydrocarbon on this food crop. Then food crop is consumed by rat, right? So food crop is consumed by rat. So concentration has increased in the body of rat. Then it is the snake. It is the snake. So again concentration has increased in snake. And lastly, it is hawk. And we will have highest concentration of contaminant in snake, in hawk, right? Why? Because hawk is the topmost consumer in this food chain. And as per the principle of biomagnification, we will have highest amount of concentration of this contaminant in the topmost consumer, right? And that's why whenever a particular pesticide is sprayed on food crop, and if that food crop is consumed by the primary consumer, which is in turn consumed by secondary, and which is in turn consumed by tertiary consumer, then it is tertiary consumer in which we will have highest amount of concentration of that pesticide. And hence answer to this question is D, hawk, right? So I hope you have understood this question. So this diagram is quite important. This diagram is quite important. Next, so answer for your question is D, hawk, right? Next now. Next question is from 2011. So next question is from 2011. Let us discuss the question. The surface of a lake is frozen in severe winter. Surface of a lake is frozen in severe winter, but the water at its bottom is still liquid. What is the reason? Fine. So the question is about why bottom of a lake body is not frozen in severe winter, though the upper layer or the topmost layer is frozen. Fine. So what are the options? Options are A, ice is a bad conductor of heat. B, since the surface of the lake is at the same temperature as the air, no heat is lost. C, the density of water is maximum at 4 degrees Celsius. And D, none of the above. So let us discuss this question. This question is about one of the very important properties of water, and that is the density of water is highest at 4 degrees Celsius. Fine. So we know that whenever any liquid is cooled, or whenever we lower down temperature of any liquid, its density goes on increasing. And that is also true for water. The density of water also increases as we cool down water from its normal temperature. And this happens because the volume of any liquid, in this case water, goes on reducing and the mass is constant, right? So when mass is constant and when volume is getting reduced, we can say that density will go on increasing, because density is equal to mass upon volume. And as volume is reducing and mass is constant, that means as denominator is reducing and as numerator is constant, we can say that our answer, that means density, will be increasing in this case, right? So this is the normal property exhibited by most of the liquid and even water, but up to 4 degrees Celsius only. So let us discuss this question. Normally, for any liquid with decrease in temperature, density increases. So this is very important point. For any liquid, temperature reduces, density will increase. But this particular principle is true for water only up to 4 degrees Celsius, right? But for water, this is true up to 4 degrees Celsius, that is below 4 degrees Celsius. That means if we try to cool down water below 4 degrees Celsius, then the density of water will not increase. Rather, it will again start decreasing. And this is one of the most important property associated with density of water. Density of water is highest at 4 degrees Celsius, right? So this water with higher density, that means water at 4 degrees Celsius, will sink below water with lower density, that means water which is less or which is at less temperature than 4 degrees Celsius. Fine. So whichever is heavy will sink down. And we have discussed that water at 4 degrees Celsius will have high density, and that's why it will be heavier than water at lesser degree Celsius temperatures, and hence this water will sink down, right? Next point. Water freezes at 0 degrees Celsius. Fine. So that was one part. That was one part that we have discussed. That water's density is highest at 4 degrees Celsius. And if we cool down water below 4 degrees Celsius, then density will increase. Sorry, density will decrease. Now, as we have said that water is highest, the density of water is highest at 4 degrees Celsius, it will be heavier than water which is at lower degree Celsius temperature. And hence this 4 degrees Celsius water will sink down, right? Now, next part, second part of this discussion is, we know that water freezes at 0 degrees Celsius and it will have lower density. So as we keep on decreasing the temperature of water from 4 degrees Celsius, the density of water will be decreasing in this case. And as we reach up to 0 degrees Celsius, water will freeze. And what will be the density? Density will be lower than 4 degrees Celsius. Next point. And it will remain on top. And as a result of that, though water has frozen at 0 degrees Celsius, its density will be lower compared to water at 4 degrees Celsius. And hence, that water which has frozen now will remain on top because of its lower density compared to water at 4 degrees Celsius. And that's why the water at lower or water at bottom will remain in liquid state even if the surface water has frozen. And that is the phenomenon. So let me explain this once more because it is complicated. So let us assume that this is a lake body. This is a lake body. So we'll be discussing first part of this particular example. Now let us consider this is upper layer of water and this is lower layer of water, and let us consider that there are only two layers of water for the simplicity of our explanation. And this upper layer, let's consider its temperature has reduced to 4 degrees Celsius now, right? And this water body or this lower layer of water is at, let's say, it is at 6 degrees Celsius, right? So density will be higher of this particular upper layer. So high density. It will have high density. And as it will have high density than this water at 6 degrees Celsius, what will happen? this upper layer of water will sink down. It will sink down, and this 6 degrees Celsius water will be at the top, right? Now, let us consider the second example. So, I hope you have understood this. As the water at 4 degrees Celsius has high density, it will go down, and the water at low density, it will come up. Now, let us consider another stage. Now, let us consider another stage. So, in this stage, we have again two layers, upper layer of water and lower layer of water. And let us consider that this upper layer is at 0 degrees Celsius and this lower level is at 4 degrees Celsius. Why we are taking 4? Because we have discussed that the density of water is highest at 4 degrees Celsius. So its density will be high. It will be at high density compared to this water, which is at low density, and this is the property exhibited by water. Fine. So as this water with 0 degree Celsius is at low density, it will remain at top. Fine. It will remain at top, and the water at 4 degrees Celsius, because of its high density, will remain at bottom. Fine. And as a result of this, at 0 degrees Celsius, we know that water freezes. At 0 degrees Celsius, water freezes, and that's why this upper layer will be converted into ice. It will be converted into ice, and lower layer will remain in water or liquid form. Fine. So I hope you have understood this particular discussion. So based upon this, we can say that the water of a lake body at the bottom will remain in liquid stage as a result of one of the property of water, and that property is its density is highest at 4 degrees Celsius. And because of this property, we can easily say that water at bottom is liquid even if surface water has frozen. So answer is the density of water is maximum at 4 degrees Celsius. Fine. So I hope it is clear to you. Now next question, and hence answer for this is C. Next question. So consider the following statements. First statement, biodiversity is normally greater in the lower latitudes as compared to the higher latitudes. Second statement, along the mountain gradients, biodiversity is normally greater in the lower altitude as compared to higher altitudes. Which of the following statements given are correct? So you have to identify amongst these two statements which one is or are correct. Options are A, 1 only, B, 2 only, C, both 1 and 2, and D, neither 1 nor 2. So let us discuss this question. This question is about the biodiversity. Though we know that biodiversity is a variety of species, genetic, and ecosystem diversity. Fine. So biodiversity consists of three different varieties: genetic variety, species variety, and ecosystem variety. But though on the face of it, it looks that this question is related to biodiversity, it is not. Rather, it is related to those factors which are favorable, because of which lower latitudes will have high biodiversity compared to higher latitudes. And similarly, lower altitudes of a mountain gradient have high biodiversity than the upper altitudes of mountain gradient. right? So this question is about the factors that are influencing biodiversity. So let us discuss this question. Firstly, first statement. So this first statement is about the lower latitudes having high biodiversity than higher latitudes. So this idea is also referred as the latitudinal diversity gradient, meaning that as you move from equator towards pole, diversity is reducing. And why diversity reduces? Reasons are: first, favorable climatic conditions in the tropical region. In the tropical region, we have favorable climatic conditions, and hence the growth and the diversity will be high in tropical regions. And what are those climatic conditions which are providing good habitat for life in tropical region? It is rainfall. So rainfall is good in the tropical region because we know that the trade winds converge at the equatorial region, and these trade winds give more rain in the equatorial region, and other tropical region also receives sufficient amount of rainfall, followed by sunlight. Sunlight. So sunlight is also good, means sunlight is also available in the tropical region, as the rays of sun are direct on the tropical region, and that's why they do not have to cover more distance from the atmosphere, which is the case with the temperate and polar region. And that's why in temperate and polar region we have unavailability of sufficient amount of sunlight, and that is one of the reasons why higher latitudes have low biodiversity. Fine, but that is not the case with tropical region, because tropical regions have favorable rainfall as well as sunlight. Next is, there is greater habitat diversity towards the equator, creating more niches for species. So as habitat diversity is more in the tropical region, especially near equator region, we will have more niche diversity for different organisms. And more the niche diversity, more will be the biodiversity, because niche determines the functional role as well as position of different species of organisms. And as these niche diversity, as this niche diversity is more, we can safely say that biodiversity will also be more, right? So because of these reasons, the biodiversity at tropical region is more. Moreover, greater primary productivity at the equator has led to greater biodiversity. That means, see, what is primary productivity? Primary productivity is the rate at which biomass is getting accumulated at the level of producers. And as conditions are favorable in the equatorial and tropical region for the growth of producers, we have more number of producers, and more the number of producers will have excellent primary productivity in the equatorial as well as tropical region. And as primary productivity of producers is more, they'll be able to feed more trophic levels, and hence biodiversity is more in the tropical and equatorial locations. And that's why the equator or tropical locations have more biodiversity than higher latitudes. Second statement is about mountain gradients. See, mountain gradients are very much similar to the latitudes of the earth, because at the lower mountain gradients, that means at the lower altitudes of mountain gradient, will have sufficient good conditions for life to occur. That means conditions will not be very harsh, favorable climatic conditions will be there, and those climatic conditions in the form of rainfall as well as availability of sunlight will be helpful for the growth of life in the lower altitudes of mountain gradient. But as we go towards the higher altitudes of mountain gradient, conditions go on becoming severe. And hence, at the top of the mountain gradients, we have ice, presence of ice is there. The snowfall is available in that location and not the rainfall. Similarly, at those locations, the availability of sunlight also decreases. And as a result of all these factors, the top gradients of mountain ecosystem have less biodiversity compared to lower gradients of mountain ecosystem. And that's why both these statements are correct statements, and hence answer to this question is C. Fine. So let me take you back to the statements. So statements are biodiversity is normally greater in the lower latitudes as compared to higher latitudes. We have discussed this because lower latitudes have good conditions in the form of climatic conditions. Also, primary productivity is more at lower latitudes, and niche diversity is also more at lower latitudes, and hence biodiversity is more. And that's why first statement is correct statement. Second is, along the mountain gradients, biodiversity is normally greater in the lower altitudes as compared to higher altitudes. Again, lower altitudes have good or favorable conditions for the growth of life, as there is availability of rainfall and sunlight, which is not available at the higher altitudes of mountain gradient. And that's why even this statement is correct statement, and hence answer is C, both 1 and 2. Now, let us move to the next question. Biodiversity forms the basis for human existence in the following ways. So basically, this question is about biodiversity or ecosystem services. So what kind of goods and services, or what kind of benefits do we receive from these forms of, or these different forms of biodiversity? That is the question, right? So options or statements are: first, soil formation; second, prevention of soil erosion; third, recycling of waste material; fourth, pollination of crops. Select the correct answer using the codes given below. So the question is about the services that we receive from biodiversity. And as we have already discussed, there are 4 different types of services received by human beings from biodiversity or ecosystem. And those services are: first is provisioning service. That means those services which can be assigned some monetary value. That means food, timber, fiber, medicinal plants, etc. are the provisioning services that human beings receive from biodiversity. Second is regulating services. So as name suggests, these are the services that are received by human beings which regulate different components of environment and makes them favorable or keeps them favorable for the use of human beings. For example, soil formation, water recycling, water purification, etc. are the services which can be categorized as regulating services. The third type of service that we receive from ecosystem or biodiversity is known as cultural service. Cultural services are the intangible benefits that we receive from the biodiversity. And what are those benefits? For example, the use of nature for tourism purposes, detoxification of human beings as they go in the lap of nature, or any other inspiration that we get from nature for various artistic purposes, be it painting, music, etc. Right? So those are cultural services. And lastly, one more service is there, and that is supporting service. Supporting services are the most fundamental services because without supporting services, we won't be able to enjoy other three services that we have discussed. And that's why the supporting services are like soil formation, nutrient recycling, etc. Fine. So this question is about those services. So let us discuss this question. So first statement is about the formation of soil. In the formation of the soil, microorganisms play an important role. Therefore, this is one of the benefits that we are receiving from biodiversity, and hence first statement is correct statement. Second statement is about the soil erosion. Biodiversity helps us to prevent soil erosion, where the role of forest or different type of vegetation that is present on soil is important, and hence even second statement is correct statement. Next, third is decomposition or management of waste material. So, dead organic matter is recycled by microorganisms, and hence it is also a service that we are receiving from biodiversity. And that's why third statement is also correct. And lastly, it is pollination of crops. And pollination of crops is carried out by various insects, bees, flies, birds, etc. And hence even fourth statement is a correct statement, and that's why all the statements are correct, and hence answer is D. Right? So this question was about the services that we receive from biodiversity or ecosystem. Next question is, okay, so next question is, in the context of ecosystem productivity, marine upwelling zones are important as they increase the marine productivity by bringing the statements are first, decomposer microorganisms to the surface, by bringing decomposer microorganisms to surface. Second, by bringing nutrients to the surface. And third statement, by bringing bottom dwelling organisms to the surface. You have to select correct statements from the above mentioned three statements, and these are the different options. First of all, let us define what is ecosystem productivity. So, ecosystem productivity is the rate at which biomass is getting produced or getting accumulated at different trophic levels. And there are two prime types of productivity of ecosystem. They are primary productivity, which is associated with producers, and second is secondary productivity, which is associated with the consumers. Right? So this question is about increase in marine productivity as a result of upwelling seen in the marine ecosystem. And the reason is being asked to you, why upwelling leads to increase in marine productivity. First of all, what is upwelling? Upwelling is the movement of bottom water towards the top or surface water, because surface water is being driven away by wind. And as that surface water is driven away by wind, it is important, or it is the natural process based upon which the bottom water will take place of that replaced surface water. And as this bottom water is going to the top, it is known as, this phenomenon is known as upwelling. And with upwelling, it is nutrients that are brought to the top surface. And these nutrients are then used up by phytoplanktons and other producers in marine ecosystem. And that's why there will be more production of food which will attract more fishes to that area, and those fishes will in turn attract larger fishes, and that will lead to increase in the productivity of that marine ecosystem, right? So that is the basic reason behind increase in marine productivity as a result of upwelling, because it is nutrients that are being brought up at the surface through upwelling. So let us discuss this question. So ecosystem productivity, we have already discussed. Ecosystem productivity is the rate at which energy is added to the bodies of organisms in the form of biomass. That means rate of accumulation of energy in the form of biomass. Marine upwelling zones, we have already discussed. Winds blowing across the ocean surface push water away. Water then rises up from beneath the surface to replace the water that was pushed away, and this process is known as upwelling. Next, upwelling occurs in open ocean and along coastline. So primarily, where we'll be able to witness upwelling at open ocean and along the coastlines as well. Next, water that rises to the surface is rich in nutrients. It is rich in nutrients, and that's why the water is, or the surface water is getting more nutrients which are used up by the producers in the upper layer of the water, and that is nothing but, or that is similar to the fertilization of that surface water, which will lead to high biological productivity, and hence it is option B which is correct with respect to this question. Fine. So let me take you back to the options, and option is 2 only, right? Because it is nutrients that are being brought up by the upwelling. Next question now. Next question is, if a tropical rainforest is removed, the tropical rainforest is removed, it does not regenerate quickly as compared to a tropical deciduous forest. This is because of which reason? Options are A, the soil of rainforest is deficient in nutrients. B, propagules of trees in a rainforest have poor viability. C, the rainforest species are slow growing species. And D, exotic species invade the fertile soil of rainforest. So, what is the reason if by any chance tropical rainforest is removed? It will take longer duration than the tropical moist deciduous or tropical deciduous forest. Fine. So let us discuss this question. First of all, let us understand where exactly these forests are located. So suppose this is the equator. Suppose this is the equator, that means 0 degree. Then 10 degrees north and 10 degrees south. This location, this is the location of tropical rainforest. This is the location of tropical rainforest. And at this particular location, we know that the trade winds converge. Trade winds converge in this particular location. And as a result of convergence of these trade winds in this location, we have very high amount of rainfall in this location which is more than 300 centimeters, which is more than 300 centimeters rain, and it rains almost daily in this particular region. And that is the reason because of which the soil is deprived of nutrients. As a result of leaching and lateralization of soil, the nutrients are removed from the soil, and hence soil becomes nutrient deficit soil. And that's why this particular soil is known as laterite soil. It is laterite soil that is present in this location because it is leaching and lateralization of nutrients that is being witnessed by this soil. And hence, if we clear a forest, or by any reason if forest in the tropical rainforest location is cleared, then it will take longer amount of time for that forest to regenerate because the nutrients are not present in that soil, and they are removed as a result of heavy rainfall witnessed by this region as a convergence of trade winds. And that's why answer to this question is A. The soil of rainforest is deficient in nutrients. Fine. So you can go through this. The tropical rainforest biome, it has poor or nutrient poor soil because of high annual rainfall and high average temperatures. Next, so the statements are being considered here. You can go through these statements. Next question now. Question of 2012. So the question of 2012 is about the Millennium Ecosystem Assessment describes the following major categories of ecosystem services. So again, the question is about ecosystem services, which we have discussed just now. I hope you remember that there are 4 different types of services that we receive. What are those services? First is provisioning service. Second, regulating service. Third, cultural service. And fourth, supporting service. So the question is about the ecosystem services. So major categories of ecosystem services are provisioning, supporting, regulating, preserving, and cultural services. Which one of the following is supporting service? Which one of the following is supporting service? We know that supporting services are the most basic or fundamental services based upon which we are able to enjoy other services given by biodiversity. And hence, the supporting services are those services which are fundamental for life. Like, so options are A, production of food and water, B, control of climate and disease, C, nutrient cycling and crop pollination, and D, maintenance of diversity. So out of these services that are being given in option, they are asking us to find out supporting service. So production of food and water is a provisioning service. It is a provisioning service. Next, control of climate and disease. It is a regulating service. It is a regulating service. D, maintenance of diversity. So this is a service which can be categorized as a preserving service. Preserving service is that service that we receive from ecosystem or biodiversity based upon which the biodiversity is preserved on the face of the earth, right? So it is a preserving service, you can say. And hence it is a nutrient cycling and crop pollination which is supporting service, and hence answer to this question is C. Answer to this question is C. Fine. So I hope it is clear to you. Next now. Next question is, so now we'll be discussing about questions from 2013. So the first question is, with reference to the food chains in ecosystems, which of the following kinds of organisms or organism is are known as decomposer organism or organism? Options are, statements are: first, virus; second, fungi; third, bacteria. You have to select correct organisms which can be categorized as decomposers, and these are the options based upon which you will have to select it. So first of all, what is food chain? What is food chain? Food chain is a sequence that represents transmission of energy in an ecosystem, and it is a feeding pattern in an ecosystem. That means who is feeding on whom, that is given or that is illustrated based upon food chains. Basically, there are two types of food chains. First is grazing food chain, and second is detritus food chain. Grazing food chain, as name suggests, is a food chain where we will have producers at first trophic level. It is a food chain where we will have producers at first trophic level. And in detritus food chain, we'll have dead decaying matter at first trophic level, because dead and decaying matter will act as a source of food for decomposers. And this question is about the decomposers. Let us consider the statements given in this question. First is virus. So we know that viruses are neither living nor non-living, and they need a host body in order to carry out decomposition. And that's why they need a host body to carry out reproduction or to multiply themselves. It is not decomposition. To multiply themselves, virus will need a host body. And any dead organic matter is as it is dead, there is no cell alive whose mechanism can be hijacked by virus to multiply. And that's why viruses are not considered as decomposers. And hence, as we know that virus is not a decomposer, you should remove first statement or option A, option C, and option D from your choices. And that is elimination method. So based upon only one particular choice, you have got the idea that it is answer B. Fine, and this is known as elimination. This is known as elimination method, which you should use in examinations, because elimination will help you answer those questions for which you are not very sure about. And it is the method that you should use in exams, because it will be the game of elimination after a particular level. After a particular level, let's say you have answered 50 questions with surety that, okay, these are the answers for these questions and I am quite sure about them. But 50 questions will not take you to, or will not help you to clear cutoff. And that's why, because out of 50 questions, there are lots of chances that some questions will go wrong. And that's why you'll have to use elimination method for certain questions for which you have a 50% chance or 50% information. And hence, elimination should be mastered by you during your test series exams or whenever you solve practice tests. Try to use elimination method based upon which you are trying to find answers for those questions for which you do not have 100% knowledge, right? So in this case, what we have done, we have used elimination. So we know that viruses for sure are not decomposers, because virus will need a host body to hijack the cell mechanism of that host so that virus can replicate. Fine. So first you have to remove first statement from all the options. So remove A, C, and D, and you are left with B, and that's why fungi and bacteria are considered as decomposers, and hence answer is B, 2 and 3. And this is very important method that you should master at your home. So whenever you solve practice test, you should develop some patterns. That means, for example, let's say you are solving 10 tests. Out of those 10 tests, initial two tests should be 100% knowledge. That means you should not use elimination in that case. Try to find out the pattern of marks that you are getting from those two tests that you have solved. Now in next two tests, along with the knowledge, that means along with the knowledge that you have got, use elimination method as well. And now track the change or analyze the change that is seen in your marks. If you find that marks are increasing in your case, then you should try to consolidate that process of elimination that you have used. In case you are not able to get or your score is not increasing, try to find out why it has happened. Is it because of the questions based upon elimination or other questions for which you were sure? Based upon this analysis, try to find out a pattern based upon which you will solve next two tests. Now, these two tests will tell you about the pattern or will help you to consolidate the pattern that you have developed based upon last four tests, right? And as you have confirmed, okay, this is the model or this is the way I should solve my exam in UPSC. Now what you have to do, you have to practice that particular path or approach for next remaining four examinations. Fine. So everyone should practice elimination at home. And based upon self-analysis, try to find out whether elimination is helping you or not. Fine. So answer for this, coming back to this question, answer to this question is B. Right. So let us discuss for fungi. We know we have discussed about virus, fungi. Most fungi get organic compounds from dead organic matter. So for fungi, it is dead organic matter which acts as a source of energy or food. And hence, fungi are decomposers which are called as saprotrophs. Next, bacteria. Bacteria are the known decomposers. They are the known decomposers, and hence answer is B, which is 2 and 3. That means fungi and bacteria. Next question now. Next question is mycorrhizal biotechnology. So this is very important term, mycorrhizal biotechnology has been used in rehabilitating degraded sites because mycorrhiza enables the plants to. Statements are: first, enables plants to resist drought and increase absorptive area. Second statement, enables plants to tolerate extreme pH value. And third statement, enables plants to resist disease infestation. You have to select correct statements from these three statements, and these are the options. Now, you must be aware of mycorrhizal biotechnology. So let us discuss firstly about mycorrhizal biotechnology. But before we discuss mycorrhizal biotechnology, let me define what is biotechnology. Biotechnology is use of living organisms or living processes based upon which certain goods or services or certain products will be developed which are helpful for human beings. Fine. So in biotechnology, what we do? We use living organisms or various processes associated with living organisms for the development of such products which are useful for human beings. The most popular example in the recent times is vaccines. So vaccines are developed based upon the viruses or various other pathogens. And in vaccines, what we use? We use weakened form of virus itself or the genetic material of virus or subunit of virus. And that's why we are using a life to develop such products which are useful for human beings. And hence, that is called as biotechnology. Mycorrhizal biotechnology is a specific branch of biotechnology, and this branch of biotechnology is trying to use the symbiotic association that is found in nature between mycorrhizae fungi and most of the plant species. In this symbiotic association between mycorrhizae and plants, mycorrhizae gets food material from these plants, and plants get access to water, nutrient, etc. from fungi. And that's why it is a symbiotic association wherein both mycorrhizae fungi as well as plants are receiving benefits. Mycorrhizal biotechnology is that form of biotechnology where we will be able to use mycorrhizae fungi deliberately to improve the productivity or to improve the degraded site. Fine. So let me show you the diagram of mycorrhizal association. So this is the mycorrhiza. Mycorrhiza is a symbiotic association between fungus and plant. So this part of diagram is without mycorrhizae. So this particular plant is not associated with mycorrhizae in this case. In this case. As a result of no association of this plant with mycorrhizae fungus, the root absorptive area is quite limited, as you can see in this diagram. Root absorptive area is limited. But second diagram is mycorrhizal association with this plant. Now, as this plant is in association with this fungus, the absorptive area has increased, and that's why plants will be able to fetch nutrients as well as water from wider area, and that's why it is considered as a symbiotic association between plants and fungus. And as a result of this mycorrhizal association, both are getting benefit. Fine. And you must be amazed that more than 90% of plants that are found in nature are in symbiotic association with these mycorrhizae. Fine. So the question is about the useful or the use of mycorrhizal biotechnology to improve degraded land, because not only water and nutrients are made available by this mycorrhizae to plant species, but also plant will be able to tolerate salinity, and that's why pH of different types can be tolerated by plants if they are forming association with mycorrhizae. And that's why second statement is also a correct statement. And the third statement is about the improvement in the disease infestation. That means plants will be able to resist diseases as a result of the mycorrhizal biotechnology. And that is also true because with access to water and nutrients, the productivity of plants will increase. And if any disease is getting is trying to infest this particular plant, based upon the use of productivity or based upon the potential growth that has achieved by plant, that plant will be able to thwart the attack of disease. And that's why even third statement is correct statement. And that's why all are the benefits that are being received by plants. So plants will be able to get or will be able to resist droughts and increase absorptive area, because that is the most basic advantage to plant if it is forming association with mycorrhizae fungus. Second is tolerate extreme pH. Yes, that is also the benefit that we have discussed. And last is resist disease infestation. And that is also true. And hence answer is D, 1, 2 and 3. Right? So answer is D, 1, 2 and 3. Fine. So answer is D. Next question is, in the grasslands, trees do not replace the grasses as a part of an ecological succession because of which of the following? Options are A, because of insects and fungi, B, because of limited sunlight and paucity of nutrients, C, because of water limits and fire, and D, none of the above. So this question is about grasslands, and it is giving us a hypothetical condition based upon which it is asking us why trees won't be able to replace grasses in grasslands if ecological succession occurs. So first of all, let us define what is ecological succession. Ecological succession is that phenomenon associated with ecosystem based upon which one particular complex of species is replaced by another complex of species, and that is an ongoing process that occurs in ecology or that occurs in ecosystem, because we know that the composition of species is not fixed, it is in flux, and as a result of which there will be constant changes that will be occurring in the composition of species, and that is nothing but ecological succession. Basically, there are two types of ecological succession. They are primary succession and secondary succession. Primary succession is that form of ecological succession which occurs on a barren or lifeless land. And secondary succession, on other hand, occurs on such land which already had life, but because of certain natural or human induced reasons, that life was degraded or devastated, and hence that land has become barren. When life reoriginates on this barren land now, that kind of succession is known as secondary succession. Fine. So, ecological succession makes sure that the species composition of a particular ecosystem keeps on changing. Right? So, this question asks us why trees are not able to replace grasses in the grassland locations. We know that grasslands are the locations which are called as ecotones. That means they are a transitional zone between forest ecosystem and desert ecosystem. So let us consider different options given for this particular question. First is trees won't be able to replace grasses because of insects and fungi. But that is not the case because grasslands are not the locations where we will have dominance of insects and fungi, because grasslands are comparatively drier locations, and as a result of this, the conditions are not favorable for the growth of insects and fungi. And even if insects and fungi grow in grasslands, they will not act as a factor of hindrance for trees to replace grasses, because we know that in tropical rainforest region, which is an abode for insects, trees are in abundance, and hence trees are not concerned, or there is no concern of insects or hindrance of insects for the growth of trees, and hence first statement is incorrect. Second statement is limited sunlight and paucity of nutrients. This statement is again incorrect statement. Paucity of sunlight is, or limited sunlight is not a factor of hindrance for trees to replace grasses, because we know that even in the temperate locations or even in the taiga forest locations, though sunlight is limited, we have different types of trees that are present in temperate and taiga locations. And that's why second statement, or this part of second statement, is incorrect. Second part of this statement is about paucity of nutrients. But this is not correct at all, because soil in grassland locations is rich in nutrients. And that's why grasses in grasslands are highly nutritious. And these areas are popular for the cattle rearing business. You must have heard about the Canterbury Plains in New Zealand, Downs in Australia, Entre Rios, Weld, Pampas, etc. All these locations are popular for grasslands and dairy business. And that's why this statement is again incorrect. Let us consider next statement, and that is water limits and fire. We have discussed that grasslands are an ecotone. That means they are a transitional biome between forest and deserts. As it is a transitional zone between forest and desert, it will have only that amount of rainfall which is sufficient for the growth of grasses and not the trees. And this is a factor that limits growth of trees in grasslands. Moreover, grasslands are the locations which are prone to fires, and hence that also act as a factor of hindrance for trees to replace grasses, especially in the tropical grassland locations. And that's why answer to this question is C. Trees won't be able to replace grasses in grassland location, as there is limitation with respect to availability of water, and also because of fire prone conditions in grassland locations. And that's why answer is C. Next now. Next question. Which one of the following is the correct sequence of ecosystem in order of decreasing productivity? What this question is asking? This question is asking you about productivity of these ecosystems, and you are supposed to arrange these ecosystems based upon decreasing ecosystem productivity. That means, first of all, you will have the ecosystem with highest productivity, and in the end, you will have that ecosystem where productivity is least. Fine. So basically, there are 4 ecosystems that are considered by this particular question. So they are oceans, lakes, grasslands, and mangroves. Fine. So, and the productivity of these 4 ecosystems is being considered in this question. So we know that productivity is the rate at which biomass is getting produced at a particular level, right? And this rate of production of biomass is referred as productivity, and it is greater for those locations or for those ecosystems which have very different types of or very high biodiversity of vegetation, right? So mangroves, as they have variety of vegetation associated with them, they have highest productivity, and that's why mangroves are at the first place for our answer. So mangroves should be at first place. So this and this should be eliminated. Mangroves, and so option B and C have mangroves at first place. Now we know that grasslands are the locations where we have presence of grasses, and they are quite productive than other ecosystems because their soil is nutritious soil, and hence they should be at the second place in terms of production, in terms of productivity. And that's why grasslands are at second place, and hence you should remove option B, and that's why your answer is C. But still we will discuss about the productivity of lakes and oceans. The productivity of lakes is more compared to oceans because in lakes, because of their shallow waters, the zone which is aphotic zone is quite limited zone. I hope you must be aware of 3 different zones of lake. So let us consider that this is a lake body. So this particular part of lake, is known as littoral zone of lake, right? Then this part of lake is known as lemnitic zone. And this is the photic area of lake ecosystem, and this particular photic area will be associated with the production of food material, right? So photosynthesis we will be able to observe in limnitic zone because it is a photic region of lake. And on the other hand, this particular zone is known as profundal zone. profundal zone, and this is dark. This is dark zone, or this is aphotic zone. That means sunlight will not be available in this profundal zone, and that's why production of food material is not possible in this profundal zone. Fine. But this profundal zone in lake ecosystem is quite limited. Why? Because lakes are shallow water bodies, and hence littoral zone and limnetic zone of lake ecosystem will make lakes more productive than ocean water bodies, right? So that's why lakes are at the third place with respect to productivity. You must be wondering why oceans are at last, or why oceans are least productive. So let me tell you why oceans are least productive. Oceans are least productive because oceans are again, sorry, because oceans are again divided into three different types. So this is the coastal location. This zone, this zone is known as the neritic zone of ocean. This zone is known as the neritic zone of the ocean. And this zone is known as the littoral zone of the ocean. Fine. So maximum productivity in ocean will be associated with neritic zone. And this part of the ocean, that means the oceanic zone, which is nothing but the open ocean. This oceanic zone is not associated with high amount of productivity, because in the oceanic zone only up to certain level we will have access of sunlight, and this part of the ocean remains dark and aphotic. And that's why in this particular region of ocean we won't be able to see the photosynthesis activity. And that's why in open oceanic waters it is only top layers of water where we'll be able to find, or will be able to have activities like photosynthesis. And that's why oceans have restricted productivity, and they are considered as least productive amongst the choices that we are being given in this question. Fine. And that's why answer to this question is C. First and the most productive is mangroves, then grasslands, then lakes, and finally oceans. Fine. So that is about this question. Answer is C. Answer is C. Fine. Next now. Next question is, with reference to food chains in ecosystem, consider the following statement. So the question is again about the food chains. Statements are: first, a food chain illustrates the order in which a chain of organisms feed upon each other. Second statement, food chains are found within the population of a species. Third statement, a food chain illustrates the numbers of each organism which are eaten by others. You have to select correct statements from the above mentioned three statements, and these are the options. Let us discuss this question. This question is about food chain again, and as we have already discussed, food chains represents feeding pattern in a particular ecosystem. or that tells us which organism is feeding upon other organism and who is eating whom. Fine. So that is a food chain. Or if we can draw a simple food chain, then we can say that grasses grasses are being eaten up by grasshoppers, which are in turn eaten up by frogs, which are feeded upon by snakes, and lastly, it is eagle that is eating snakes. Fine. So this is a food chain in which grasses are the primary or grasses are the producers. They are eaten up by grasshoppers, which are primary consumers. Then frogs are eating grasshoppers. They are secondary consumers. Snakes are tertiary consumers as they eat secondary consumers in the form of frogs, and the eagles are the topmost consumers because they are feeding upon snakes. And this is a food chain. It tells us the flow of energy from producers to consumers. Also, it tells us who is feeding upon whom. That means feeding pattern is illustrated by food chains. So let us discuss the statements that are being given in this particular question. So first statement is a food chain illustrates the order in which a chain of organism feed upon each other. So this statement is correct because based upon food chain, we get the idea who is eating whom. And that's why first statement is a correct statement. Second statement is food chains are found within the populations of a species. But we know that food chain is between communities. It is not between species. It is not between the population of species, and hence second statement is incorrect because as we have discussed in earlier food chain that we have drawn, grasshoppers, grasses, grasshoppers, frogs, snakes and eagles, this is a set of a community, and food chain is about a community and not about a population of species, and hence second statement is incorrect. Third statement is a food chain illustrates the numbers of each organism which are eaten up by others. Food chain illustrates number of organisms, but that is not so. Food chain will tell us about the feeding pattern, but not about the number of organisms that are being eaten up by others. And hence, third statement is again incorrect statement. And that's why answer to this question is A, one only. Fine. So, you can go through this particular explanation at your place. Next question. Consider the following organisms. First, agaricus. Second, nostoc. Third, spirogyra. Which of the above are used as biofertilizer or biofertilizers? So again, this is an application of certain organisms or the processes that are found in these living organisms to make such products which are useful for human beings. And in this case, the useful product is biofertilizer, wherein we are using life or living beings to increase the production of food grains. Fine. So out of these three, which are considered as the biofertilizers? So let us discuss this question. So first of all, what are biofertilizers? So in nature, there are a number of useful soil microorganisms And when we culture these useful soil microorganisms, we are converting them into biofertilizers, which can be added to soil to increase the production of food grains. Thus, the critical input in biofertilizers is the microorganisms which are useful for human beings, as they improve the nutrient availability in soil. So let us consider different statements that are given in this particular question. First is about agaricus. So agaricus is edible fungus which is popularly known as mushroom, and hence it is not a biofertilizer, and that's why it should not be in your answer. Second, nostoc is microorganism composed of bedded filaments which aggregate to form a gelatinous, that means jelly like mass, growing in water and damp places and able to fix nitrogen from atmosphere. So what this particular nostoc organism is doing, it is helping us to fix to fix atmospheric nitrogen, which will be used up by plants growing in that soil. We know that atmospheric nitrogen cannot be used directly by plants, and hence it need to be fixed so that plants can absorb that nitrogen from soil. And that is the function played by various microorganisms, including nostoc. And that's why they help in increasing the nutrient content of soil, especially the nutrients associated, and that is nutrient of nitrogen. Sorry. Next, Spirogyra is an unbranched filamentous green alga. It is valued for human consumption and is known as an important source of natural bioactive compounds for antibiotic, antiviral, antioxidants, anti-inflammatory, and cytotoxic purposes. So these Spirogyra, they are used in various drugs or other forms of medications where they are acting as a natural bioactive compound. That means they ensure that the compounds that are used in drugs or other medications, they remain effective till it is being used up by the patient. Fine. So Spirogyra is used for that purpose, as well as it is used for human consumption. Fine. So therefore, only nostoc and neither Spirogyra nor agaricus is used as biofertilizer. Fine. So only nostoc is used as a biofertilizer, and hence answer is B only. Next question is, which one of the following term describes not only physical space occupied by an organism but also its functional role in the community of organisms? Right. So what is term that tells us about the functional role as well as position? So we know that it is described by niche. Ecological niche is the term which tells us about the position of an organism in an ecosystem as well as the functional role played by that particular organism in an ecosystem. And hence answer is B, ecological niche. But we will also define other three terms. Ecotone, as we have already discussed, grasslands are ecotone. But what is the definition? Ecotones are the transitional ecosystem between two ecosystems, and they have very specific kind of characteristics, as a result of which certain specific forms of species will be seen in those ecotones, right? For example, even littorals are considered as ecotone because they are a transition between terrestrial ecosystem and marine ecosystem. And ecotones are associated with species like mangroves, which are not found in terrestrial ecosystem nor in marine ecosystem, right? So that is ecotone. Third term is habitat. Habitat is the range in which, it is the location in which will be able to find out the species. For example, polar bears will be found in the polar locations or locations which are occupied by glaciers. Similarly, camel will be find or will be able to find camel in deserts or drier condition locations because that is the habitat for them. So basically, habitat is the address of a species, and these are the specific conditions which are favored by various organisms for their growth, right? Next is home range. So, home range is a location which is used by a particular species of organism for its life processes. For example, if we consider human beings, then for human beings, their home, their school, their offices, etc., etc., will be a part of their home range. It will be a part of their home range. Fine. So, answer to this question is B, ecological niche. But along with this, we have also discussed other three terms, right? And that is about our discussion of these questions. In next video, we will continue our discussion of previous year questions related to ecology. Thank you for your time. I am Rajvardhan Bodekar signing off. I hope you have understood these previous year questions because these previous year questions are important from exams point of view because they act as lighthouses. Thank you. Thank you for your time.